All right, if you were going to map out the entire story of humanity, where would you even start? You probably wouldn't begin with kings or empires, right? No, you would start with the tools we've built. So today, we're going to dive into the 9 technological revolutions that didn't just change history, they created it.
So what is it? What's that one single force that has shaped us more than anything else? The thing that's consistently driven our progress, our societies, heck, even our own evolution.
Your first thought might jump to powerful empires or brilliant leaders, maybe some big ideologies. And look, those are all super important pieces of the puzzle, for sure. But they aren't the real engine of change, not at the deepest level.
It's always been about technology. I mean, from the very first sharpened stone all the way to the algorithm that's probably deciding what you see next, the tools we create are what end up creating us. Our inventions, they are the true architects of history.
All right, so let's start at the very beginning. And I mean the very beginning. We're going way back to an era that stretched on for millions of years, a time when our number one job every single day was just to survive. This is part 1, Mastering Survival.
Okay, the first thing you really have to appreciate here is just the immense time scale. It's kind of hard to even wrap your head around. We're talking about a gap of over 2 million years between our first simple tools and the start of farming. 2 million. Then watch what happens. The time between these huge revolutions starts shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. That acceleration, that's a huge part of our story today.
For most of human existence, our technology was pretty simple, but it was absolutely life-changing. We had stone tools, hand axes, scrapers, things for hunting and preparing food. We figured out how to control fire, a total game changer for warmth, protection, and cooking. And we started making basic clothing out of animal skins so we could survive in brand new climates.
And this simple tech, it completely dictated how we lived. We were in these small nomadic groups, always on the move, following the food. The entire economy was just survival. And all our knowledge, all our stories and skills had to be passed down person to person just by talking. Think about how fragile that is. This was our default setting for millions of years.
Then, around 10,000 BCE, everything changed. Seriously, this was a massive shift. We started developing the technologies for farming. We figured out how to domesticate plants and animals. We invented plows and irrigation systems. We even created pottery so we could store extra food. You could argue this was the single most important revolution in all of human history.
I mean, the impact was just staggering. For the first time ever, we didn't have to wander anymore. We could settle down. And that led directly to the first villages, which grew into the first cities. Naturally, populations just exploded. But there was a dark side to all this. Living so close to our animals meant widespread disease for the first time. And owning land, that created social hierarchies, a concept of haves and have-nots that just didn't exist before. Our entire social world was completely rebuilt, for better and for worse.
But that stability also allowed people to specialize. See, when you're not all worried about where your next meal is coming from, some people can focus on other stuff, like mastering metallurgy, first with bronze and then with iron, to make way better tools and weapons. And this is a huge one. We invented writing, a tool not just for stories, but for managing these new, complex societies, for preserving knowledge forever.
So you take these 2 new tool sets, metalworking and writing, and what do you get? Well, you get the foundation for the first great civilizations on Earth. We're talking about Mesopotamia, Egypt, places like that. Suddenly, we could build organized governments, write down actual laws, and expand our reach through both trade and, conquest.
Okay, so this brings us to the second major era in our story. Technology's job wasn't just about building societies anymore. Now, it was about connecting them, shrinking the world, and linking people across vast distances.
And here, we see this really fascinating evolution. You've got the classical world, think of Rome, perfecting this massive infrastructure, incredible roads, aqueducts. Then, a bit later in the medieval period, the focus kind of shifts. It's more about mechanical power, like windmills, and crucially, the tech we needed for global exploration. Things like the compass and much, much better ships. And then, an invention comes along that just pours gasoline on the whole fire. Gutenberg's printing press. But you gotta remember, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. This whole period was an explosion of new tools. We had advanced navigation gear that made the age of exploration possible. We had eyeglasses and microscopes that let us see the world in ways we never could before, from the stars down to a drop of water.
Why was the printing press such a big deal? Because for the very first time, knowledge wasn't just for the rich and powerful anymore. Information could be copied and spread around cheaply and super fast. This new accessibility is what fueled the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the entire scientific revolution. It was literally the internet of its day.
And that explosion of knowledge, it leads us right into our final era, where the pace of change just goes into complete overdrive. Welcome to the Great Acceleration.
Hey, remember that timeline from the beginning of our story? Just look at this again. It took almost 12,000 years to get from farming to the steam engine, okay? Then just 220 years to get from the steam engine to the internet. And from the internet to the AI revolution we're in now, maybe 25 years. The pace isn't just fast, it is accelerating like a rocket.
Starting in the late 19th century, the revolutions just start to cascade, one right after the other. First, the Industrial Revolution gives us steam and factories. Then, boom, right on its heels, a second wave electrifies the entire world and gives us the car engine. Then, barely a generation later, the digital age hits with computers and the internet. Each leap, from mechanical power to electrical grids to processing information, just perfectly set the stage for the next one.
Yeah, the Industrial Revolution was the huge turning point. For the first time in history, we were using power that didn't come from a muscle, not human, not animal. The steam engine, chugging along on coal, gave us mechanized factories, mass production, and it completely rewired society around these crowded, often polluted cities. The world became unrecognizable in just a few generations.
And then comes the one we've all experienced firsthand, the digital revolution. The internet, computers, that gave us instant communication with anyone on the planet. They rewired our entire economy around data. And they totally transformed how we work, how we learn, how we connect with each other, basically dissolving borders and creating these whole new worlds online.
So, after this incredible whirlwind journey through history, where does that leave us now? Let's quickly recap the pattern we've seen and then look to what's coming next.
When you lay it all out like this, you can see this incredibly clear, logical progression. It's almost like a staircase. First, we made tools just to survive, then tools to settle down, then tools to build whole civilizations. After that, we mechanized production, then we digitized information, and now we're automating thinking itself. Each step stands directly on the shoulders of the one before it.
So there you have it, 9 distinct technological revolutions. Each one was a massive leap forward that completely reshaped what it means to be human, usually in ways the inventors themselves could never, ever have imagined. And that brings us to right now, to this very moment, because we are all living through the very beginning of that 9th revolution, artificial intelligence. And if this whole journey has taught us anything, it's that every single one of these revolutionary tools has rebuilt the world from the ground up. So the question for all of us is pretty simple. We are the architects of this next great change, so what kind of world are we going to build?